Have we done it? Have we found the most depraved short story in the entire Ernest Hemingway canon? According to some, yes. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for the 108th video in the short story discussion playlist and the 31st video in the Ernest Hemingway Read Along playlist, a playlist where we're just going short story by short story through the Finca Vigia edition of Ernest Hemingway's short stories. Today's video is about a short story called An Alpine Idyll. There will be three parts to this video: a So What Happened recap portion, a literary criticism section where we talk about all of the literary goings-on in this short story, and I have but one note in the Writer's Corner portion of this video. What notes can we take from this short story as writers ourselves? Now, so what happened? It's springtime in Austria, but not springtime for history's most famous Austrian. That's a different story. Our protagonist and his friend John are hiking past a funeral, and they talk about how bad it would be to be dead on such a day. They get to their inn, and they get some beer, and there they talk about how they were pent up in the hut too long. You shouldn't do anything for too long, don't you know? And while they're there, the guy from the funeral, Oles, comes in, sits down, and gets some schnapps. The sexton comes in too. He gets some wine. A little later, the guy from the funeral leaves, sort of, in a puff. The innkeeper and the sexton talk. Then they tell the narrator the story after the innkeeper calls all peasants beasts. They're all beasts. Those peasants, they're beasts. Eventually, he tells the story. The guy who left, his wife died. That guy who had the schnapps was burying his wife. Had a bad ticker. Everybody knew she had a bad ticker. Bad heart. It was going to happen eventually. So she died, and the guy reported it. But it was winter. Tough sledding in the winter, couldn't get her body into town, so he put her in the shed. But that's not the weird part. It's not that weird, don't worry, but still weird. Something was wrong with her mouth. Not that weird, don't worry, but still weird. The sexton wants to know how her face got that way, so the sexton asked him how her face got that way. Not too fond of saying anything, so the sexton demanded to know, and it turns out that while his wife was in the shed, it'd be a shame to let that labor go to waste. So while he was in the shed working, he hung the lantern from her mouth. Those peasants, all beasts. Now, what is worth talking about in this short story? Oles. The peasant's name is Oles, O-L-Z. Apparently, this is a fairly common last name in Austria. Not the most common, but decently common. And apparently, if you go back long enough, in ancient French, Oles means eyes. Now, Oles needed to see, so he hung the lantern from his wife's mouth in the shed. So Oles was using the lantern to see. His name is the eyes, couldn't see. Is this a bit of irony, talking about what is it that we are for? What is our meaning, our purpose, our use? If the guy who is named after the eyes can't even see properly, maybe this is a folly on everything that we do as people. There seems to be some level of commentary about being people in general. Who are people? Who are sub people? The people of civilization, like John and our narrator and the sexton and the innkeeper, well, they're real people, but those peasants, those are just beasts. Are they really even human? There is further commentary on this in the fact that the sexton and the innkeeper, and by extension, we're supposed to believe John and the narrator, think that a human body is still a human after it's dead. So the corpse is still human. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so strange to use it as furniture and hang a lantern from it. So there is some commentary seemingly there on what it is that makes a person, what it is that makes a person worthwhile, how it is that a person would be worth talking to, worth civilization, worth having around, all of these sorts of things. The next note there, othering. Peasants seen as subhuman. So if they are subhuman, is it really desecration of a corpse to hang a lantern from it? The way that you or I might decorate a house with the bear skin that we just shot, right? Or the way that we might wear fur or leather, right? All of these things, which I've never understood that a lot of hatred towards fur, but not so much towards leather. You get leather stuff all around. Anyway, just a weird little sub note there. But I think this idea of peasants being subhuman is interesting because obviously the sexton is giving the peasant the ability to bury his wife in the churchyard, but then saying that all of them are subhuman. So if the subhuman, why is the wife subhuman too? If so, do you bury subhumans in the churchyard? Like, it's just like, I know that the criticism there is not absolute. He's not actually saying, that was the innkeeper that said they were subhuman. But the criticism isn't actually that they're not human. It's that they just don't belong in civilization, right? So I just think it is an interesting bit of perhaps hypocrisy there. And then the final thing there. So Idyll. The story is called An Alpine Idyll. Alpine, in reference to where they are, Idyll is also a little bit of a reference to where they are. Idyll, Idyll, is a work of art having to do with rural, Rural, or pastoral life. Idyll, Idol, is an object representing a god or deity. It is holy. An idol is holy. You would not perform sacrilege on an idol. You would not desecrate an idol. It is a religious thing. Is this commentary on the holy man holding the body as an idol, Idol, while the idle man, Idyll, views it as a thing that had carried his wife? The body is not his wife. Her soul was his wife. The soul is gone. Therefore, the body is just a thing, and it may as well now, it carried his wife's soul. It may as well now carry his lantern. I think that this is the IDYLL dichotomy here is interesting to me because I don't know that we have any real reason to believe that the IDYLL idol is an is a it, I don't know that we have any reason to believe that it is a double entendre on IDOL, except that the sexton and the innkeeper seem to be treating the woman's body as an IDOL, in the fact that it is supposed to be sacred and unaltered and unharmed and all of these things. Now, the writer's corner portion of this video. Filtering the filterer. In literature, one of the things that will really pop your writing, really make your writing stand out, really make your writing feel present, is to not filter. What is filtering? If I were writing a first-person story, or no, it's probably a better way to do this if I'm talking about a third-person story. There is a character in my book called Leonardo. Leonardo was walking down the streets when he heard a rattle coming from behind him. He heard a rattle coming from behind him as filtering. You are filtering the experience through a character to your reader. If Leonardo was walking down the street when there was a rattling behind him, that becomes more present. That becomes more immediate. That becomes a sensation for your reader as opposed to an observed sensation. If we have to watch Leonardo hear the rattling, all of a sudden we're twice removed from the thing. But if Leonardo is just walking down the street and there's a rattling, we are experiencing the rattling. What Hemingway does, this is a really good example of Hemingway's biggest fault, in my opinion. Hemingway filters the filterer. Hemingway will give you a story told to the protagonist. So here we have the innkeeper explaining to the protagonist what the innkeeper had heard. So we're here, we are reading our protagonist's words. Our protagonist is relaying the words of the innkeeper who was telling what Oles had done. How interesting would this short story be were we simply watching Oles go through this struggle? As it is, it's a decent story to read. I don't think it particularly sticks with you. I don't think you get the experience of anything here. So the only experience you get as the reader is the experience of our protagonist and his friend John. Right? The beginning of the short story, you feel the sun on their faces. You do not feel the cold as Oles had struggled through it without his wife. How great would this short story be if it were the struggle of Oles transitioning from his wife as a human being to his wife as a piece of furniture? How interesting would that short story be? How interesting would it be if he's doing his woodworking in the light of the lantern suspended from his wife's mouth, and he's just running through memories of her, how they met, their wedding, all of these things. How interesting would it be if he used her mouth. I believe what is going on in the shed is he's chopping wood for fires, right? I believe that's what's going on there. How interesting would it be if he is chopping wood by the light of a lantern suspended from his dead wife's mouth while realizing that all the wood he chops is going to heat him when it used to heat them, and it feels like half of that heat is being wasted. Instead, this short story is simply a story of judgment. We don't get any of the human behind Oles. We just get the judgment of the beast from the innkeeper. That is all I have for this short story discussion. Pardon me. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.